MOBA, also known as Action Real-Time Strategy, are games in which players are usually divided into two teams that compete against each other in a scattered game map, with each player controlling a chosen character through an RTS-style interface. However, unlike traditional hardcore RTS games such as StarCraft, these games usually do not require the operation of organization units, such as building complexes, resource and training troops that are common in RTS games, and players only control their chosen characters. A typically MOBA game usually has the following characteristics. 1. A group of 4 to 5 people, instant confrontation. 2. Fighting on a map, usually with terrain such as obstacle and hiding places between two bases. 3. Multiple line of troops. 4. The win condition is to break the enemy's defense and destroy his base. The characteristics of MOBA games are the control of the battlefield and teamwork. Real-time strategy game is a kind of strategy game. Players build buildings, produce soldiers, defeat the opponent, and in general are a type of game in which troops are deployed. The game is played in real time instead of the turn-based system that is common in strategy game, and is characterized by the high demand on the player's tactical acumen and operational ability. Throughout the game, players have to constantly operate dozens or even hundreds of units of their own with different characteristics. Through the collection of resources, production of units, the destruction of enemy units, and finally seize the game victory. The characteristics of FPS games are divided into the following points. 1. Gameplay. An FPS game can be without any plot, but not without gameplay. Gameplay is a FPS game fatal element. To put it simply, the FPS game is fun to play. More accurate to say that the game is not playable can be in the play to attract players. 2. Plot. Generally pass FPS games. Pay attention to gameplay. At the same time, more attention to the plot. Through the development of the plot, to portray the characters throughout the game, to enhance the gameplay and playability, even make the game more connotative. 3. Screen. Top FPS game not only focus on gameplay and plot, but also work on the screen and the game engine, so that the game's picture become more realistic and the scene is more powerful and shocking. 4. Authenticity, screen quality, and the content of the game to reflect. PvP refers to player versus players. That is, a game player attracting another game player. The biggest feature of the PvP mode is that it turns your game with the game designer into a game that you play with others under the rule of the game designer. Player vs player is not only about defeating, beating, or outsmarting your opponent, but also about putting your opponent at as much of a disadvantage as possible so that they don't do the same to you.
The difference between this type of games. Mobile games place more emphasis on the player's own actions. Players must operate a certain hero alone, incarnate as this hero, and use this hero identity to fight. But the game operation of RTS games is different, requiring a lot of macro operations. In other words, it is equivalent to the commander dispatching troops, directing large troops to do different combat behaviors. Multi-line operations, commanding an entire army to fight against the enemy's army. And at this time of the operations is not just one hero, but an army. FPS, first-person shooter, first-person perspective shooting game. As its name implies, it's a shooting game based on the player's subjective perspective. Players no longer manipulate the virtual characters on the screen to play the game like other games, but experience the visual impact brought by the game immersively, which greatly enhance the initiative and the realism of the game. PvP is the abbreviation of player vs player, which is a battle between players and players of opposing camps and factions. PvE is the abbreviation of player vs environment. PvE is the player vs computer AI, playing system monster and copying and so on.
For the example of esports, there are many different types of esports, like the fighting games and racing game and sport game and digital games and real-time strategy games and first-person shooters. So, for the fighting games are one of the classical varieties of esports, with titles like the Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2 being the first major title to gain the national attention. In fighting games, two players compete against each other in combat using the variety of kicks and punches and special attacks. Some of most popular fighting games today including the Mortal Kombat 5 and Super Smash Bros. For the racing game puts esport athletes in the driver's seat while competing against one or more drivers at the same time. The racing games can be reality simulations, arcade styles games with the unrealistic vehicles or combination of both. Some popular titles in racing games including the Mario Kart and Need of Speed, the real strategy. The real strategy games are the characteristic by the players competing stimulating rules. Race games typically consist of four main elements: building, technology, resourcing, and units. Some popular RTS games are Age of Empires, The Company of the Heroes, and Total Wars. Thank you.